actually very interested in the whys. I get very interested in, I mean, there's historical whys and there's practical whys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually interested in both. I'm interested in how does the practice develop? And I'm also interested in, I'd say, all of the words that I typically use as an academic tend to feel kind of pale and pointless. But I mean, the phenomenological, which is a fancy way of saying the sort of the experience that you have in the midst of doing something, and then experiential. Well, experience actually is a good medieval claim that, whether we've had experience of these things. But what you and I have talked about, it's like we actually get to the liturgical. What we're trying to show is what it's like being inside these practices as you would if you were saying them out of devotion or in worship, right? And I'm very interested in the why, both whys, right? How does this develop as a practice, and what kind of practice is it? What kind of experience do people have in it? So which one did you just ask me? Which why do you want an answer to?
Well, you've written the book, Mary and the Art of Prayer, as a kind of snapshot of a lived experience, which is very unique. And in the culture at the moment, you're always hearing people say, well, according to my lived experience, and this is my lived experience,
right.
And therefore this is an authoritative opinion or perspective. But it has not been the case in academia that the lived experience of medieval Christians is a sort of valid perspective. You, on the other hand, have gone ahead and written a book, a successful attempt at writing.
I've set her up to say all of this,
Yes, she bribed me with a lot of chocolate. No, not really.
I think I bribed you with beautiful pictures and photographs.
You did. An amazing sound quality, because I'm terrible at saying.
Oh, well, there you go. I bribed you with experience and practice. Oh my goodness.
Lived experience. Bribery. But you did. You basically you prepared this book as a way of showing people the lived experience of medieval Christians, which has not been done before. It's a very kind of shocking difference to read it compared to a regular academic book studying the history of anything. So why lived experience? What made you do that?
Oh my goodness, yes. Well, one, because obviously Our Lady was nudging me to do it, and I'm just stuck with having to deal with that, because I prayed when I was younger for wisdom, and my book is actually about a quest for wisdom. So that's, I suppose, at another level of problem, but also because we're here streaming partly because I need to know what it's like being in this environment, right? We're in this digital environment. We need to know what it's like. We've talked a lot about this streaming now, and it's turning into a really active metaphor for us. And I realize that I always want to know the meaning of things from within that practice. And I take, spiritual understanding as one of the things that we do also need to understand. I don't think you can understand fencing unless you've been a fencer. I don't think you can understand, playing the fiddle. I did play fiddle for 10 years, not terribly well, because I needed to know what it was like from within that musical practice. And I realized that with prayer practice, I talk about this in the book, how in the academy, we just haven't figured out any way to talk about it at all. There's, and I start the book with this meditation that's one of my very favorite, from C.S. Lewis, where he's talking about, it's called a meditation in the toolshed, and it's a little piece that he published in the 40s, how he had been in his toolshed and saw a beam of light coming through the crack on the top of the door, and standing from outside of the beam, he said, I could see the beam of light, right? I could see the dust motes dancing in it, and the sort of, you could actually see the beam. But then he says, I stepped into it, and then instead of being able to see the beam, which you couldn't anymore, you could see along it to the trees outside and sort of rustling in the wind, you get the idea of, and then to the sun, however far away it is, 93 million miles away, he says. This is resonant for Lewis because he was actually very interested in astronomy, and if another stream that we can do one day is about the Narnia books and how they're actually all about the planets. But anyway, so he's thinking in sort of cosmic terms of, when I'm outside of the beam, I can see it, but when I'm in it, I can see things that I can only see by it. And it's obviously a lovely metaphor for seeing by the light, right? That we as Christians are invited to step into God's light and see along that light to spiritual realities that we can't see when we're outside of it. And that outside view, Lewis goes on, because he's an academic as he's writing this too, saying in academia, all we've ever done is stand outside the beam and look at it, right? And that we have this conviction that we can explain things better from outside. Love, for example, or well, actually gives the examples of love, right? If you're a lover and you're within the love, you see your lover, you're looking along the beam at your lover. From outside, oh, well, the psychologist might explain it as a hormonal thing, or, the sociologist might explain your ritual dances for fertility as, some kind of being a performative functional thing. That all of the social sciences, they're constant, sociology, psychology, political science, they're all stepping outside the beam and trying to say, we as scientists, we as scholars know more about it than the people that are participating in it.
Which is quite a claim.
But, well, it's the one that we've been, drowning in, obviously, since even before Lewis, that we end up with this. Those who are not participants in the experience know better about the experience than the people that have actually lived it, which is then making the kind of weird sort of schizophrenia, I think, in academia now, where we have all these people saying, well, that's not my lived experience. You can't possibly speak for me. And it is, I find it very, very strange that, of course, I then say, I'm a Christian. I want to understand a particular kind of prayer practice. I'm going to rhetorically take you inside this frame, inside this prayer practice, by showing you its history and then showing you the practices that people lived with. And I am told as a scholar, well, that's not scholarship anymore. That's you made it up. And I'm like, but these other experiences you say can only be understood by way of people's lived experience. So which is it, right? I mean, go ahead.
Oh, it's an interesting problem there, because what they're essentially saying is that it's maybe too uncomfortable that particular lived experience more than any others. Is there something about Christianity which our culture needs to be looked at only from the outside to keep us in that safe, non-aligned arena, like that secular perspective of looking at it empirically? Do you think this is a taboo, that we are not looking at Christianity from the inside in this way, because of a fear maybe that the effect of going into it is going to transform people, or maybe knock some other taboos out of the way, some other sacred cows? I don't know.
Could there be? Could it be? It is certainly taboo, right? And I was a bit startled by this, because I've written 2 big academic books, right? And they're both like ridiculously long and took me decades to write and think through. The first one,
so naturally I'm the one that's going to ask you about the book.
Yeah. Because I did write the second one. I should stop gripping my notes. I did write the second one because I was trying to bridge. I mean, it's like there was a fashion back when I was studying anthropology for a bit. Victor Turner and his wife Edith wrote about pilgrimage as a liminal experience, right? And there's all sorts of ways in which academia got very excited with these liminal experiences. Well, I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to write a book that's both inside and outside, right? And that I'm going to make the threshold, the passage into the frame, very, very clear, which I do in this book. But I am going to take you inside, and in my first book, I wrote abstractly about empathy as a methodology, and people really like that, right? And I'm like, okay, that's good. I'll do it more. You seem to like that. I'll go off and study psychology for a year and some years and read. I mean, I read an evolutionary psychology stuff enough to know what's nonsense and what's actually possibly helpful, but it's all from the outside, right? And so I say I need to find a way to practice inside, which when you're describing, it's like, why in academia are people scared? The Atlantic article is clearly trying to set up a fright frame for, look at, I mean, what did they say about the saying the rosary is like, guns, right? Guns and rosaries. I think they changed the title after that. That was too good, right? It was like it was too metal, and so they had to change it now. It's some.